Today, we're exploring the filthy and cavernous tones found deep within the catacombs of old-school death metal. I'm going to talk to you about recording drums on a very tight budget, as well as demoing out the newly released Heavy Pedal Mark II from Audiority, and some of the new features and sounds within it. But first, let's check out this banging demo track. I hope you found that satisfyingly sick. If you enjoy my videos and want more juicy guitar content, don't forget to utterly demolish that like button and subscribe. Now let's talk a little bit about drum recording. The drum mics I use are the Digital Reference DRDK7, a 7-piece drum mic that can be had for about $200, though I got it on sale for only $100, and that is a steal. These drum mics are not amazing, but they're not bad. They need some EQ and the usual tricks to make them really shine, and I'll show you a little bit about how I got there. Know that they are okay drum mics, and don't expect them to be world class, but for that price, you can hardly complain. Here's an overview of how I set up my drum mics. It's all fairly standard. I have a single stand for my overheads to keep my studio a little neater. The tom mics clip onto the shells. I have a small mic stand for the kick drum. The one piece here that is not included in this drum mic set is the MkII 991 condenser mic that I use for the snare. When recording acoustic drums, it's important to have fresh heads that have been tuned for the session. For metal kick drums, it helps to have a beater pad like this Kevlar pad, as well as plastic beaters. The kick drum has a pillow inside it, which is providing some dampening, but not deadening the entire drum. I've been piecing this kit together over the years. It's nothing fancy. It helps to have decent cymbals that you like the sound of. For metal recording, I don't think that the quality of the shells is of utmost importance, but the hardware should be good enough that it can be tuned easily and that the kit is well maintained. I lubricate all my lugs with white lithium grease, which helps them to turn smoothly. I have a drum dial which I like to use when I put new heads on the kit to get them roughly in tune, but then I tune everything else by ear. It's also good practice to keep your cymbals as far away from the close mics on the toms as you can. It's important that your drum kit is comfortable to play, but in order to minimize bleed, we want to move the cymbals out of the immediate vicinity of the tom mics and the snare mic. I'm no authority on drum recording, but I've been playing around with this kit and this mic set for a couple years, and I found what works for me and what's convenient. I'm able to leave these mics set up so I can record quickly whenever I want to. Drum recording and mixing is the most difficult part of any metal production. It's also the most expensive when it comes to the microphones and interface required. Though it can be done on a budget, Not every project or genre calls for the most polished and modern drum sounds. With the overabundance of heavily edited and sample-replaced drum productions, there's a different vibe to a real drum performance and listening to the drums that were actually recorded. People can get overly caught up in trying to perfect everything, and I'm guilty of that too. But there is definitely something nice about recording real drums and hearing real drums. I'm no amazing drummer myself, but I enjoy recording and I enjoy working on my own drums. I enjoy mixing live drums. It's fun to have a kit, it's fun to play, and it's fun to make your own recordings. I can edit everything, I can sample replace stuff, and sometimes I do, but it's also a good production challenge to make the drum sound as good as possible without relying on samples. I've certainly learned a lot and grown a lot as a mixing engineer by working on drums. They are challenging and they present you with a lot of problems that recording guitars just don't. Even vocals are far easier to edit and work with than drums are. Drum editing is challenging, drum mixing is challenging, drum recording is challenging. And so I encourage anyone who's thinking about drum recording to not be too afraid of it, but also have your expectations in check that if you go out and spend a lot of money to set up for drum recording, don't expect to get amazing productions from day one. I do the best I can and I spend often more times on drums than anything else. It takes many years and a lot of different experiments and productions to really get decent even at drum recording. But it is fun and it will challenge you and it will push you. And even if you're using a sampled drum library, I think it helps a lot to know how to mix an acoustic kit and deal with some of the problems that that will present. And then when you take that back to recording with sampled drums, that you have that experience and you can work to make your samples sound better and more natural and less artificial and fake. I've learned a lot of skills from recording acoustic drums that I use when I'm working with a sampled drum library. So I think it is a very valuable skill. I'm going to play you some of the soloed drums, and we're going to talk about what I did to mix it. I don't want to get super in-depth into every plugin and every decision because there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot I find that comes more from necessity, trying to achieve a particular sound, than just a general workflow thing that I have to do every time. Every drum production is a little different based on the guitar tones you have, based on the arrangement of the song. But I'll show you my general process that I follow with most of my drum productions. Let's take a listen to the whole kit first, and I will break down the tracks a little bit. For this, I am going for more of a old school sound, so it's not entirely the most modern. The mics I have here are the two overheads, the kick mic, the snare top, I don't have a snare bottom, the three individual tom mics, and a room mic, which is the mic I'm talking into now, in the same position. These are the main plugins I'm using. I have a noise gate first, which is the gatey weighty here, and then that's running into this SSL channel strip. I just sort of recently, in the last couple months, started using these. The stock plugins, even on Reaper or Pro Tools or whatever you're using, can also do a lot of the same things. The main thing is understanding how to EQ the individual drums and how to compress them and how to use noise gates efficiently. I think if you get those three aspects, the rest is fine-tuning, and some of that comes down to taste. So here's what I have for the kick drum. I have it high-passed at 25 to cut out a little bit of the low end. I've got a low pass going at 8.6 kilohertz to cut out some of the cymbal bleed. I have 62 hertz boosted for the low frequency. That's boosted by 8.7 dB here. It's a fairly big boost. I have a big dramatic cut at 500 hertz. To cut out some of the mud and boxiness. I've got a large 9 decibel boost at 2 kilohertz for some of the beater attack, as well as another 9 decibel boost at 6.5 kilohertz. None of those numbers are really important on their own But the main things I look at for a kick drum, I want to boost the resonant frequency, which depends on your kick drum. I want to cut usually somewhere around 400 to 500 hertz to get rid of some of the boxiness and make the drum sound more clear. And then you want to find where you want the click of the beater to sit and then boost that. I've also got the compressor on here. This is the stock settings actually. Fastest release, 6.0 ratio, 6:1 ratio. And then the threshold it's about 6 dB of gain reduction. I also have this expander on, which is sort of working as a second noise gate. Just the kick drum on its own. All right, the snare is a little bit of a problem area for every production, in my experience. It's hard to get rid of the bleed while keeping the attack of the snare. Again, here are the same plugins. I've got the gate going. The EQ on this is different, but achieves a lot of the same things. I've got the gate on this afterwards as well. So I've got 2 gates on it. The numbers here are not that important, but the principle is I like to boost somewhere around 160 to 200 hertz usually for some of the low end of the snare. I did a little bit of surgical EQ here with the re-EQ going in. This big notch here is to cut out some of the ring. And then there's, again, a big cut here to try to get rid of some of the cymbal bleed, which is always a problem. And I would like to find a better way to get a good snare sound without so much bleed. So this is not an example of the best recorded snare in the world or the best sounding finished product, but I just want to get it to sound okay in the mix, and I think it does that pretty well. Again, I've got a big cut here at 500 hertz to get rid of some of the boxiness. I've got the high end boosted at 1.7 kilohertz for some of the attack on the snare, and then 2.4. That's just to get the attack without too much of the cymbal bleed. And then I've got the post gate. I've got the compressor on 4:1, again going for around minus 6 dB. When you have blast beats, you've got extra problems with your levels being all out of control. If I was a better drummer and could consistently play super hard on the blasts, it would make my life easier. I set the gate so that it doesn't cut out on the blasts, and you can automate it higher during the other sections. I didn't do that here because this is just kind of a quick song, but that's one way to do it. Make sure that you're not gating out the hits on your blast beats. And then I've got a little bit of reverb afterwards. Here is what the snare sounds like. Not a flex of an amazing snare, but it's okay. That's the best I could get the bleed here without spending a lot more time on it. I'm not in love with it, but that is what it is. The toms here are pretty simple. I've just got these running through re-EQ. I've got this tuned a little bit to the resonant frequency of each of the individual drums. I've got the gate here. Same idea with the toms. I want the beater hit, I want to cut out some of the bleed, and I want to boost the resonant frequency. And then I've got a compressor on that. Here are the toms. Now they are fairly dark, and you're going to get some of the attack back in the overheads, but they're a little bit dark because I want to get rid of bleed. Last are the overheads. This is again running through the SSL. This has got a big high pass at 500 to cut out just a lot of the kick, the shells, the noise, rumbles and stuff. Cut at 5 kilohertz and a boost at 13 to get some of the air. I've also got this more surgical EQ to get a little more body in the cymbals as well as cut out a lot of the harshness. I think the mic overhead was maybe a little too close, and it's also partially my playing and my cymbals. There's just a lot of harshness, so it looks dramatic. It is. The better your recording is, the less you have to do these extreme moves. But sometimes you just have to fix what ain't great. Got a very light compressor on this at 1.6 just to give it a touch of compression, but I don't really compress the overheads much. Yeah, again, the overheads are nothing amazing, but they do the trick. Lastly, here is my room mic, and I've got it running through a lot of equalizers just to get rid of some of the mud, mainly doing some cuts. I've got some of the high end boosted on this one. I do have this one heavily compressed, put the expander on it as well, and then I cut some of the high end out. Why I did it this way, I don't know. I was mixing and I was hearing stuff and tweaking stuff, and it's not an exact science. But here is my room sound. There's no reverb on this, so it's just the rooms on its own. And this is a mono room mic as well. A lot of the times when I'm mixing drums, I'm hearing problems and trying to remove them with EQ, and then I will try to make some tactical boosts to get them to sit right if I want them, usually just brightening stuff up. But I try to remove the bad stuff first, deal with the harshness in the cymbals or the boxiness in the shells, get that stuff out, and then do some boosts once I've done the cuts I want. And lastly, my drum bus has this bus compressor on it, just a 2-to-1 ratio. It's just there to glue everything together. It's not a crazy amount of compression, but it just helps tie it all together a little bit. Let's look at the guitars. And this is the new Mark II heavy pedal, based on the HM2, of course. This is from Audiority. I think it sounds really good. I think it's the best HM2 emulation I've heard. They just released this new version with a cool black background, which is a nice touch, and a couple of new mods on it. So we are up to 9 mods now. For this one, I'm using this new Filth mod, which I think sounds really nice. It's extra dirty and messed up. I've got the distortion only halfway up because it's already a lot. And then that is running into this rust channel of the neural archetype Gojira, which works pretty well with this pedal. Let's just listen to the guitars in solo. The guitars are quite nasty, and I really like this new Filth mod. It's even more over the top on an already over the top pedal, so that's fun. Here is my lead sound, and this one is using this SMM, which I think is based on the Aryan Metal Master. Got some of the highs rolled off and the distortion a little lower. Here is my lead sound. You can hear that's also got some reverb and delay from the archetype Gojira. And lastly, my bass also has, I have this split into 2 tracks. They're both running through the Ampeg SVT-VR, and I've got the HM2 channel blended in with the Gojira cabinet on that. So one is going through the bass cab, one is going through the guitar cab, and here's the settings. I'm using the SMM mod again, that's another new one, and I've got the bass and the high controls rolled off a little bit, and that's blended in with the clean sound. So Here is the bass tone. Here is the post EQ that's going on the bass. Here's the clean channel. I have this cut around 650. I have a little bit of the low end boosted up, and I've got a lot of boost on the highs for that clank, as well as a little roll off on either end. And then the HM2 channel, I've got a lot of the lows cut out and a lot of the highs trimmed off, just to get to sit better with the guitars and not overwhelm the kick drum with too much low end. Then globally on all the guitars, including the bass, I have the stock Reaper multiband compression, the X comp. That has just got a single band, which is pulling down some of the lows during the chugs and stuff. That just tightens up the low end. I'm not going for a tonal shift. Really just there to tighten up the dynamics and make it a little bit less spiky in the low parts. So that wraps up my quick little old school death metal tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope maybe you learned a thing or two. I would definitely check out the Heavy Pedal Mark II. If you don't already have the VST, you should go buy it. Not sponsored, by the way. I just really like their products, so I'm happy to endorse them. If you do have the Heavy Pedal, it's a free update. Go ahead and download it from their website. It's cool. The new mods are fun. There's another new mod, the FX56, which is based on the, I think it's the American Metal from DoD. It's whatever their HM2 clone is. That's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. Smash like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.